My stepmother erased my name from the will, but the judge read a secret document they didn't know existed. I stood at the gate while the rain washed the garden. The funeral was over, and people moved away like shadows. My stepmother, Vivian, wore a satin dress and a thin smile that was not warm. She walked past me, her face cool. "This is family only, dear," she said, as if she had the right to choose who belonged. Her voice stabbed me. I held the silver locket my father gave me and felt its weight in my palm. My hand shook. I remembered my father's laugh in this yard, how he taught me to plant seeds in spring. I had cared for him through nights of sickness. I had sat up with him when the chemo made him pale and quiet. I washed his shirts and read him stories when he could not sleep. I thought he knew my name. Vivian's laugh was thin. "Not on paper anymore," she said, like a curtain dropping. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her everything I had done. I wanted to throw the locket at her heels. But I stood still and watched her walk into the house that had once been my father's safe place. A cold blank opened in my chest. I stepped back, pressed my fingers to the locket, and felt a promise I could not yet explain. I would not vanish. If you're hooked by the twist, hit subscribe for more true revenge stories. The lawyer read the will in the high room while sunlight made lines on the floor. I sat with my hands in my lap. My heart beat loud like a drum. The lawyer unfolded the paper and spoke in a slow voice. I listened to every word, hoping my name would come. He said, "To my beloved daughter," and then he stopped. The room held its breath. Vivian leaned forward with a small smile like a knife. She cleared her throat and said, "He meant me." The lawyer read on, and I felt my throat close. "Claire, this clause is revoked." My name was crossed out like a mistake. Ink through my name. My mouth went dry. I tasted salt in the paper's dust. I thought of the meals I cooked when my father could not eat. I thought of the nights I sat awake to rub his feet. I remembered telling him jokes to make him breathe again. In my mind his voice said, "You are my girl." Now ink had taken that promise. Vivian's 2 sons smirked like thieves who had found the back door. I stumbled out into the hallway and gripped the banister. Hot tears came and I tried to breathe. I felt like the house had closed its doors on me. I wanted to run and break things. Instead I held the locket and listened for a clue. My father's whispered words came back, but I could not yet make sense of them. The lawyer folded the will and placed it into a folder like it was the last page of a story someone else would finish. I walked away from the mansion and sat on a cold stone bench. The world felt unfair in a way that made my legs weak. I thought of every day I had given my father. I had been with him for the worst nights and the small mornings. I had read his lists and handed him pills. Vivian had rarely come by. She had sat in bright rooms and eaten warm meals while my father and I sat in quiet kitchens. Now she had everything. The house, the accounts, the keys on a gold chain. I watched her through the window once. She moved through rooms like a new owner learning the steps of a dance. The 2 sons, tall, sure, murmured jokes. My father's chair sat empty like a heart missing a beat. People around me said quiet phrases, "I'm sorry," and "sometimes wills change." They used small words to cover big hurts. I wanted to shout, "He loved me." Instead I wrapped my hands around the locket and felt silly for hoping paper could not erase love. I stumbled through memory like a map with torn edges. The chemo, the nights I fell asleep on his floor, the way he called my name with softness. Those memories did not belong to Vivian. They belonged to us. At the edge of my sadness something clicked. A thin, hard sense that said, "Do not let this be the end." I stood slowly, wiped my cheeks, and thought about the garden shed where my father loved to work. He had said odd things long before he was gone. I tucked those words in my pocket like a secret I would one day open. Evan, Vivian's husband, or son-in-law, one of those men with a soft voice and cold eyes, came close. He said under his breath, "You should have seen this coming. You're not blood." His words were small but heavy. The room seemed to lean toward him. He smiled like a man pleased with a clever plan. I looked at him and felt the locket press warm against my chest. "You were his heart," I said, my voice quiet. The words left as a small thing but felt like truth. He laughed with the men, and the laugh sounded like coins. They clinked in a pocket. The people at the funeral nodded to one another like a club. I felt alone. Memories came back in slices. I had been there when my father had asked for water, and I had run to get it. He had held my hair when I had been sick. I had sewn up tears in old shirts. I had spent afternoons reading aloud to him while Vivian went to town meetings. It hurt that their eyes could turn from all that to a line on paper. I left the room slowly and walked down the long hall to the study where my father kept old tools. The house felt like a stage, and I had been a player without lines. I sat in the study and pressed a hand to the wood of the desk. I remember the weight of my father's hand over mine when he taught me to plan. I felt a calm like a small lamp lighting. Something inside me grew steady and small. I would not leave without a fight. Weeks later, a notice came like a slap. Viv wrote words on paper that said I had to leave in 14 days. "You have 14 days to vacate the property," the letter read in formal fonts. I stood in my old room and looked at the boxes I would have to carry. The house felt empty on purpose now. The rooms had the smell of someone else's cleanliness. My father's old photo still smiled from the mantel, and the locket burned at my throat. I packed slowly, because moving felt like pruning a garden you loved. I found my father's gloves in the shed and a small key taped inside the leather. On the key was written 2 letters, "LL Love Lives." My hands trembled. He had said something months before, words that did not make sense then. I thought of the mornings when he would sit in the shed and hum while he fixed loose hinges. He called the shed his place of thinking. The key was rusty but fit a secret like a promise. I sat on the floor with a box of old tools and felt both brave and very tired. There were neighbors who watched with cautious faces. Vivian's feet moved like a boss through the house, placing chairs and making lists. I held the key and the locket and felt my father's voice like a warm breeze. He had left me something small and hidden. I did not know what it was yet, but I felt the pull of it. I would find what he left me, even if I had to pull up every floorboard in the house to do it. I woke to a thin light and a note stuck to the front door. It said in black letters, "You have 14 days to vacate the property." My hands went cold. The paper felt like a judge's gavel. They acted like this was a legal end to our life together. I looked at my father's old armchair and thought of nights I had sat there reading to him. Now a stamped envelope told me to leave. Vivian's boys moved things with careful speed. Boxes I had not packed were already being pushed toward the driveway. The house smelled like someone had swept away memories into neat piles. I walked the rooms that had held my life and found small empty spaces where things once were, an old mug, one of my father's pens, a worn photo. I felt like a ghost in my own house. I called our lawyer friend once, but the calls went to voicemail. I tried to breathe and remember how my father used to say, "When the wind pushes, plant stronger roots." Those words floated back at odd times. I sat in the garden and let the cold air touch my face. The locket in my hand seemed heavier now. I realized they wanted me gone before anything else could be found. People at the market looked at me like a woman wearing a storm. I packed slowly, folding shirts like memories. I did not know where I would sleep after the 14th day, but I held that key, LL, and the thought of a hidden place kept a small, warm spark alive. They could push me out of the house, but they could not push me out of the chance to find whatever my father had left. I promised myself I would not walk away empty. I decided to look in the old garden shed before I left. The shed had been my father's place for thinking. It smelled like soil and oil and old wood. Tools hung on the wall with neat order, and dust lay in quiet lines. I found his gardening gloves in the corner, the leather soft from years of use. When I pulled them out, something small fell from inside. A tiny rusted key. It had 2 letters carved on it, LL. My hands trembled as I read the mark. Love Lives. My father had a way of speaking in small riddles when he did not want to be direct. I pressed the key to my palm like a secret note. A memory floated up, him tapping the shed roof and whispering, "If you ever need what matters, look where love lives." Then he had coughed and changed the subject. I had thought it was just a silly thing. Now it felt like a map. I searched the shed carefully. Old seed packets, a cracked pot, a box of nails. The floor had a rug that my father used to throw over spare lumber. I lifted it slowly and felt the give of a thin board. My heart beat fast. What if there was nothing? What if I had read too much into a rusty key? I knelt and pushed at the board. It moved a fraction. When the board came loose, cold air breathed up from under the floor. I found a small metal box tucked in a hollow. I held it in my lap and felt like someone had handed me a pulse. I brushed the dust away and saw an embossed letter on the lid, my father's old monogram. My breath stopped. I had a strange feeling that opening it would change everything. I turned the key in my fingers, steady and small like a promise. The key fit the box perfectly. My hands were not steady, but they were not confused either. I felt the weight of the metal against my palm and thought of the nights I had sat beside my father when he could not sleep. The box clicked open, and I saw inside a flash drive wrapped in an old handkerchief. There was also a folded letter with his handwriting across the top. My breath left like a small bell. I unfolded the letter first. The handwriting was a little shaky. It said, "If you are reading this, they have tried to erase you. Don't let them." Dad! My eyes filled with hot tears, and then cooled with something like steel. He had known they might try to take this from me. He had hidden it in the place he loved most. The flash drive felt small and alive in my hand. I had never seen my father use a computer much, but he had always been clever with people and plans. I wrapped the handkerchief around the drive and tucked it into my pocket. I looked at the shed like a room that had been a library of secret things. The thought that my father had planned for a moment like this made me feel less alone. I clutched the locket and thought of his voice whispering riddles. Maybe the flash drive held more than words. Maybe it held truth. I sat down on the old wooden bench and felt the sun come through the slats. For the first time since the will reading, I felt a small stir of hope. I would not be erased if my father had left me proof. I carried the metal box and the flash drive into the house like a guilty thing. The living room looked stranger now. Furniture shined, pillows smooth, Vivian's perfume in the air. I found a quiet corner where the old radio used to sit and plugged the flash drive into my laptop. My hands shook, but I clicked it open. There was a single file named For Claire, Final Wishes. The words alone made my throat tighten. When I hit play, my father's face filled the screen. He looked older than I remembered and tired, but his eyes were steady. His voice came soft. If you're seeing this, they've tried to erase you. I felt like someone had put light under a rug. He explained things slowly. He said he had changed his mind about the paper will. He said he had recorded this video 2 days after the document that Viv used. He said small details about things only we knew, how I liked my tea and how I watered a particular plant. He named me the primary heir and appointed me the executor of his charitable holdings. He spoke about evidence that someone had been pressuring him during visits. He said, plainly, that if the message was hidden, then I had to prove it and fight. Tears fell down my cheeks. I listened to his laugh in the video and felt him near again. My phone pinged with a message from a neighbor telling me folks were moving boxes into a van across the street. Panic rose. I pressed pause on the video and felt the room tilt. I knew Vivian's friends watched closely. I had less time than I thought. For the first time in days, I felt a sharp edge. Either I could act or the work my father had done would be swallowed by legal papers. Hit subscribe for more true revenge stories if you want to see what I did next. After the video, I felt a cold rush of fear and a hot sense of duty. The file showed a date 2 days after the official will. It meant my father had changed his mind, had spoken with a clarity he had not always shown. I wrote down every second of the video as if I could pin each word to paper. The sun lay across the desk while I tried to think fast. Vivian would try to finalize the estate before anyone found this. I had to move. I took the flash drive and the letter to Mr. Henson, the family lawyer who had helped my father years ago. He frowned when I showed him the file and the date stamp. This is not in our records, he said. His eyes were cautious. He held the letter and flipped it like a man reading a puzzle. I told him about the shed and the key and how my father had whispered clues. He told me he'd help, but that I would need proof the video was real. His voice was calm, but his fingers tapped nervously. Vivian's calls were already coming, polite, sharp. She sent a message telling me to leave quickly and that it would be better for me to move on. I saved the message. Her words were small and cold. I felt the walls close in. I also felt the locket heavy and true against my heart. Mr. Henson said I would need forensic proof, and time was short. I thought about the 14-day notice and realized the race had already begun. I had a secret that could undo them, but I had to prove it beyond doubt. The courtroom felt like a place that might save my name or end me. I sat on the porch steps with the flash drive in my pocket. The sky was gray, and the wind sounded like pages turning. Mr. Henson said we needed proof, real proof, that my father's video was authentic and legally binding. I watched trucks move across the road, carrying furniture from houses that still had families in them. I wondered if anyone knew how deeply my life had cracked. I opened my laptop again and watched the video a second time. My father spoke slowly. He said, "Claire, this is my real will. I want you to have my home, my funds, and all my charity plans. You have the heart for it." I paused the screen where his eyes looked right at me. I touched the screen lightly and felt tears climb up again. He spoke about Vivian. If this is hidden, it means she succeeded in pushing me during treatment. His voice did not hold blame. It held sorrow. I replayed that part twice because it made my chest ache. He told the camera where documents were stored, how he recorded the update, and why he trusted me more than anyone. I wrote down the timestamps and details. I knew I needed help, someone smart with computers and files. I thought of Nina, a digital forensic expert who once helped my school with a data breach. I found her number in an old notebook. When she answered, her voice was sharp, steady. I told her everything. She paused only once and said, "If you have the original metadata, I can prove it." For the first time since Vivian cut me out of the will, I felt the floor stop shaking. I met Nina at a small cafe near the courthouse. She wore glasses and carried a laptop bag heavier than mine. When she sat down, she pushed aside her tea and said, "Show me the drive." I placed it on the table like a fragile treasure. Her fingers moved fast. She plugged it in and opened a program I didn't understand. Lines of code scrolled like falling rain. She frowned once, then nodded. "This is clean. No tampering. The timestamp is original. It matches the camera model your father used." My breath caught. She looked at me with calm eyes. "This is strong evidence. But you'll need more. Vivian will fight hard. People like her don't lose quietly." Her words sent a tremor through me. Vivian's voice echoed in my mind, sharp, smug. I knew she would try to crush me if she felt cornered. I told Nina about the shed and the letter. She didn't smile. "That letter helps. But in court, truth needs more than emotion. You need patterns. Proof of manipulation." I felt anger rise in a clean line. I remembered nights Vivian didn't come home while my father reached for water. I remembered her strange calls, her sudden control of his appointments. Nina typed fast, pulling logs, dates, records. She said, "This is bigger than you think." As I walked home, her words echoed. My father had seen what I couldn't. He knew I would need a shield. I held the locket and whispered, "I'll finish what you started." The wind was cold, but for once I wasn't afraid. Mr. Henson invited me back to his office. When I arrived, he shut the door tightly, like he feared someone might listen. I handed him the flash drive and the metadata report from Nina. He looked through everything slowly. His brow tightened. "Claire, this is valid. Legally valid. But Vivian will try to bury this fast." He pulled out the thick binder that held the estate papers. "Here is the problem," he said gently. "If she pushes for summary closure, the estate could be sealed before we present new evidence." My stomach tightened. I thought of Vivian's cold smile, the way she moved like the house belonged to her bones. "We only have days," he said. He rubbed his temples. "We'll need a motion to contest the will. And we'll need witnesses. Witnesses." I thought of my father's words. "They've tried to erase you." I remembered the times Vivian whispered to him in his weakest hours. I remembered the bruised look in his eyes when he tried to explain things but couldn't. As we talked, his assistant Mark stepped in with tea. His eyes met mine in a long, careful way. Something like guilt flickered across his face. He placed the cups down and said softly, "If you need help, I have something." Mr. Henson looked startled. Mark cleared his throat. "Your father trusted me. He left something with me." My hands froze. Mark slid a sealed envelope across the desk. "He told me to give you this only if something felt wrong after his passing." My heart hammered. I walked home with Mark's envelope tucked under my coat. My hands felt too warm, too shaky. I didn't open it until I reached my room, which felt smaller each day I packed pieces of my life away. I sat on the bed and broke the seal. Inside were 2 flash recordings and a small note in my father's handwriting. "Claire, if you are hearing this," someone pressured me. I pressed play on the first recording. Vivian's voice floated through the tiny speaker. She spoke sharply, like someone trying to control a frightened man. "Sign it, Richard. Sign it now. Why are you making this so hard?" My father's voice sounded weak, sick. "Vivian, I want Claire to—" "Claire does not matter," Vivian snapped. "Sign it. I have plans." I covered my mouth. My tears fell hard and fast. The second recording was worse. Vivian told him he was confused, tired, emotional, until he whispered that he didn't understand what he was signing. She kept pushing. Her voice was thin and cruel. I sat frozen. Every moment I had doubted myself, every time I had felt small, came back like shadows creeping. I saved the recordings, made copies, and hid them inside my pillowcase. I knew Vivian would not stop. She wanted everything. When I stood to leave the room, I found a slip of paper under my door. The letters were cut from magazines. "Stop digging, or we will bury you next." My breath shuddered, but the fear didn't drown me. It fed something sharp. I folded the threat and whispered to the empty room, "You should not have done that." I took the recordings and the secret note to Nina the next morning. Her eyes sharpened when she listened. "This is coercion," she said. "Hard coercion. And the note is intimidation. Keep everything." She backed up the files onto an encrypted drive. I felt safer, like placing a shield between myself and Vivian's shadow. Then Nina opened Vivian's financial logs. "She filed a petition for summary closure," she said. "This means she wants the estate wrapped up before you can present evidence. She's rushing. The deadline was just 72 hours away." My heart lurched. I ran to Mr. Henson's office. He scanned the papers and shook his head. "She's trying to block you out for good." He drafted a motion to contest the will, attaching the metadata report and an affidavit stating that new evidence existed. "This buys us time," he said. "But only if the judge grants the stay." His assistant Mark waited outside. He whispered, "Claire, your father told me to protect you if things came to this." He looked frightened but determined. Vivian came here the day after he passed. She searched his files. She tried to force me to hand them over. She smelled trouble. I felt sick. "Did she get anything?" He shook his head. "No. I hid what mattered." Outside, clouds gathered like dark shoulders. I knew the storm had found its center. I held the locket and thought of my father's voice. "Don't let them erase you." Not anymore. By morning, she filed for summary closure with a confidence that made my stomach twist. Mr. Henson called me in. "She wants the estate locked before your evidence is reviewed. You have hours, not days." I felt the walls close again. We submitted the motion to contest the will, attaching the metadata in Mark's statement. The clerk stamped it with a heavy thud. As I walked outside, a black car slowed beside me. One of Vivian's sons leaned out. "Stop now," he said. "You're embarrassing yourself." I didn't answer. I gripped the locket and kept walking. At home, boxes were stacked higher. Vivian's voice floated from inside, humming. She thought she already won. But I plugged the video into my laptop and watched my father say, "This is my final will." His eyes were steady. Mine hardened. The storm was coming, and I was done being quiet. Mark met me behind the law office after sunset. He looked nervous, glancing over his shoulder. "Your father trusted me," he whispered. He handed me a second envelope, thinner than the first. He made me keep this off the record. Inside was a signed memo stating he'd updated his will via recorded testimony, naming me heir and executor. The paper shook in my hands. It was dated the day after Vivian's forged version. "He knew she was manipulating him," Mark said. "He said you'd need this someday." My throat tightened. This wasn't just a clue, it was armor. We scanned everything into secure files. Mark whispered, "Vivian's meeting with her lawyer tomorrow." She looked scared. That surprised me. Maybe she sensed the ground shifting. I left the office feeling stronger. My father had prepared more than I ever imagined. It wasn't just a secret. It was a roadmap. I spent the night reviewing the new envelope's documents. They painted a clear picture, Vivian visiting only during his medication hours, pressuring him with quiet threats. My father had logged dates, even noting when she hid papers from me. I felt anger burn like a small fire. The next morning, I brought everything to Nina. She studied the files, nodding. "This is powerful," she said. "Patterns, timestamps, handwriting. It proves coercion." My phone buzzed. Vivian posted on social media. Children should know when to let go. Her followers praised her strength. I felt my jaw clench. Nina placed the backed-up evidence in my hand. "You're ready," she said. "Ready." The word felt heavy and sharp. I knew Vivian wouldn't stop. But now, every lie she told had a matching truth. And truth was finally loud enough to fight back. We filed the official contest that afternoon. Mr. Henson walked with purpose, dropping the packet on the clerk's counter. "We're requesting a full hearing," he said, "with digital evidence and allegations of coercion." The clerk raised an eyebrow but stamped it. The hearing was set for 10 days later. When Vivian received the notice, she stood on the porch glaring at me. "You won't win," she hissed. "You were always the weak one." Her son smirked behind her. I didn't answer. I handed her the court papers, watching her smile falter when she saw the judge's signature. For the first time, fear flickered in her eyes. Inside my room, I replayed my father's video. "Fight for the truth, Claire," he said. I whispered back, "I will." The deadline no longer scared me. The courtroom would decide, and I finally had a voice strong enough to be heard. By sunrise, retaliation came. Vivian blasted a post online, "Greedy girl tries to steal what isn't hers." Her friends cheered. Her sons added comments mocking me. But by noon, subpoenas arrived at her door, one for the notary, one for her financial records, and one for her computer logs. She tried to hide her shock, but her hands shook. I watched from across the street. The woman who told me, "You don't belong here," suddenly looked small. That night, I heard her yelling inside the house. She slammed doors, shouted orders, made frantic calls. She knew the courtroom wasn't just a formality now. It was danger. I lay in bed clutching the locket. My father's voice echoed in my memory. Love lives in the truth. And the truth was finally waking up. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters. Cameras flashed like lightning. Someone shouted, "Claire, is it true your stepmother erased your name from the will?" I kept walking, wearing my father's old lapel pin. It steadied me. Inside, the courtroom buzzed. Vivian sat at the plaintiff's table in a pale suit, pretending to tremble. Her lawyer whispered in her ear while her son sat behind her, smirking. I felt my fist tighten. Mr. Henson leaned close to me. Stay calm. Truth is on our side. The judge entered, stern and tired. Everyone rose. My heart thudded like a drum. When we sat again, Vivian's lawyer stood first. He painted me as unstable, a grieving girl chasing fantasy. The word stung, but I kept my gaze forward. Then it was our turn. Mr. Henson rose slowly. Your Honor, he said, we have the testimony of the deceased on video. A ripple ran through the courtroom. Vivian stiffened. Reporters leaned forward. Even the judge raised an eyebrow. Mr. Henson continued, This is the decedent's final will, recorded 2 days after the written version. Gasps moved like wine through the room. Vivian's lawyer snapped, This is outrageous, fabricated. Mr. Henson held up the forensic report. Verified, untampered, authenticated. My pulse shook, but I stayed still. This was the moment I'd waited for. The judge nodded. Play the video. The lights dimmed slightly. The screen lit up. My father's tired but warm face appeared. He said my name. He said I was his chosen heir. He said Vivian pressured him, manipulated him. Murmurs exploded behind us. Vivian froze, eyes wide, mouth tight. For the first time since the funeral, she didn't look powerful. She looked cornered. When the video ended, the judge said quietly, Mrs. Ellison, do you have a response? Vivian's hands trembled. Vivian shot to her feet. That video is fake, she screamed, voice cracking. He was confused, sick. She manipulated him. She pointed at me like a child angry her toy was taken. The judge slammed her gavel. Sit down or be removed. Vivian sank back into her chair, shaking. Her sons muttered under their breath, unsure for the first time. Mr. Henson called our expert Nina. She stepped forward confidently. The video is genuine, she said. The timestamp matches the recording device registered to Mr. Ellison. No edits. No anomalies. Digital signature intact. Vivian's lawyer fumbled through his papers. There must be an error. Nina tapped the screen. No error. This is legally valid. Reporters scribbled wildly. I saw flashes of cameras. My heart felt like a drumbeat of hope. Vivian sank lower in her seat. For the first time, she understood. The truth my father left behind was bigger than her lies. Next came the financial records. Mr. Henson placed them on the evidence table. Your Honor, these show Mrs. Ellison transferred $20,000 to the notary who handled the original will. The courtroom gasped again. The judge's eyes narrowed. Bring in the notary. When he walked in, he looked terrified. He sat, swallowed, and avoided everyone's eyes. Under questioning, his voice shook. She paid me to replace a page, he admitted. She said Mr. Ellison wouldn't notice. Vivian let out a sharp cry. Lies! All lies! The judge slammed the gavel again. Enough! Vivian's son stared in stunned silence. Then Mark took the stand. He testified that he witnessed my father signing the real will. He saw Vivian's son steal the envelope afterward. His voice was steady, clear, honest. Vivian collapsed back, pale and sweating. I held my breath. The courtroom had turned against her. The judge removed her glasses and looked at both tables. I have heard enough. My chest tightened. This was the turning point. Everything my father hid, everything I fought for, balanced on her next words. The court recognizes the digital video will as valid, she said. My breath caught. All prior documents are void. Vivian let out a choked sob. Her sons cursed under their breath. The bailiff stepped closer. Mr. Henson squeezed my shoulder. Then the judge continued, voice firm. Furthermore, this court is referring Mrs. Ellison and her associates for investigation regarding fraud, forgery, and coercion. Vivian's mouth opened in horror. The bailiff moved toward her table. I exhaled, slowly, deeply. For the first time since my father died, I felt the weight on my chest lift. Justice had begun. Vivian's lawyer tried one last swing. Your Honor, even if the will is valid, there's no proof of intentional fraud. Mr. Henson placed a new folder on the table. We do have proof. Bank statements, screenshots, wire transfers. He pointed to the highlighted line, Vivian paying the notary $20,000. Then another page, a hidden account with unusual deposits tied to her sons. Vivian's face drained of color. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. The judge called the notary back. Confirm this payment. He nodded, trembling. It was from Mrs. Ellison. She said it was for help with the will. The courtroom erupted. Vivian swayed in her chair. Her sons whispered frantically, panic replacing arrogance. The judge slammed her gavel. The evidence shows deliberate tampering of a legal document. I felt a sharp breath of victory. My father's truth was finally burning through her lies. The notary's confession broke Vivian's last defense. Cameras flashed. Reporters whispered. Vivian's sons argued with each other, voices shaky. Then the judge said, "Mrs. Ellison, stand." Vivian rose on unsteady legs. Her pale hands gripped the table. "You are hereby placed under investigation for will tampering, bribery, and coercion." Vivian choked out. This is all her fault." She pointed at me like I was the villain. I didn't move. I didn't speak. For once, silence was stronger than shouting. The bailiff approached. Vivian tried to step back. "Wait! I didn't mean harm." He was confused. He wanted this. But her words collapsed under their own weight. Her sons tried to leave, but investigators stopped them, handing each a subpoena. The judge added, "This court will not tolerate manipulation of the vulnerable." I felt tears in my eyes, not of sadness but relief. For the first time, someone believed him. Someone believed me. Mark took the stand again, this time with steady courage. Mr. Ellison told me he feared Vivian would hide his true wishes. He trusted Claire. He said she would honor what mattered. Vivian shook her head violently. "He never said that." Mark continued, ignoring her. I saw her sons remove the real envelope after Mr. Ellison passed. They laughed, said no one would check. Gasps filled the room. Vivian's sons turned pale. The judge leaned forward. "Did you witness coercion?" Mark nodded. "Yes." Vivian pressured him during medication hours. She monitored his calls. She ordered me not to let Claire in certain days. Vivian screamed, "Liar!" 2 bailiffs grabbed her arms. I watched her world crumble. Everything she built on deceit folded like paper in water. My father's voice replayed in my memory. "Don't let them erase you." He had trusted the right people. And now the truth had teeth. The judge took a long breath. "After reviewing evidence, testimony, and the authentic digital will, this court rules in favor of Claire Ellison." A soft sound escaped my throat, half sob, half relief. Vivian froze, eyes wide and empty. "The digital will supersede all previous documents," the judge continued. "Claire Ellison is the rightful heir and executor." My whole body warmed with quiet shock. Vivian's sons cursed. Vivian tried to lunge toward me, but the bailiff held her back. "She stole everything from me. I deserved it." The judge struck the gavel. "Remove her." Reporters stood, shouting questions. Cameras flashed. I sat still. My hands trembled, but not from fear, from the weight of winning. The judge looked at me kindly. "Your father clearly trusted you." I nodded, unable to speak. For the first time, the house, the legacy, the truth were mine again. The sentencing came quickly. Vivian and her sons were charged with fraud, forgery, and coercion. They were taken away, while reporters filmed their angry shouting. Vivian looked over her shoulder at me. "You ruined my life." I didn't reply. The bailiff closed the door behind her with a final click. Mr. Henson placed a hand on my shoulder. "It's over." But it didn't feel like an end. It felt like a release, like chains falling away. I stepped outside the courthouse into bright sunlight. Reporters asked how I felt. I simply said, "Free." As I walked down the steps, the locket grew warm against my chest. I touched it gently. "Dad," I whispered, "we did it." For the first time in months, I breathed without pain. Justice had not just been served. It had been reclaimed. The mansion door creaked when I pushed it open. Sunlight slid across the floors like it had been waiting for me. For months the house felt cold, claimed by the wrong hands. Now it felt like my father exhaled inside its walls. I stepped into the foyer and whispered, "We did it, Dad." Each room held memories. Soft ones, warm ones. No more Vivian's perfume or her sharp heels on the floor. The silence felt like peace instead of fear. I walked upstairs and touched the railing he sanded by hand. The room smelled like dust and hope. Boxes still sat where Vivian abandoned them in her rush. Her framed photos were gone. Good. In the study, my father's chair waited. I sat down, letting the leather settle around me. It felt right, like a puzzle piece snapping into place. For the first time, the house was mine and safe. While cleaning the study, I noticed a panel on the wall slightly uneven. When I pressed it, it clicked open. Inside was a small safe I hadn't known existed. My breath caught. The key from the shed didn't fit, but one of the desk drawers held a thin brass key taped underneath. My hands shook as I turned it. Inside lay folders tied with string, my father's handwriting on each. Schools, orphanages, families in need. I read the letters slowly. He had spent years donating quietly, helping people who never knew his name. He wanted the house, the estate, the money to continue helping others. Tears filled my eyes again, but they felt different this time. Warm, proud. He didn't leave me wealth to keep. He left me a mission. Suddenly, everything made sense. Love lives, he had said. And here, in this hidden safe, his love lived on. I called Mr. Henson, Nina, and Mark to the study. We sat around my father's desk, the folders spread like a map. He wanted all this to continue, I said softly. He wanted his legacy to grow. Mark nodded. He trusted you to lead it. That night, I drafted a plan for a foundation, one that would carry his name and help families the way he always wanted. I named it the Ellison Hope Foundation. A week later, I stood before a small crowd in the living room, now cleared and bright. This house won't be a tomb of greed anymore, I said. It will be a home of giving. People clapped. Nina squeezed my hand. My heart swelled. Starting the foundation felt like planting a seed in rich soil, one my father had prepared long ago. I finally understood. My inheritance wasn't money. It was purpose. Reporters gathered outside on the day of the foundation launch. Cameras flashed as I stepped onto the porch. For once, I wasn't afraid of attention. I wasn't fighting anymore, I was building. One reporter asked, "Do you have a message for the people who wronged you?" I paused. The old me would have spilled anger. But now, I smiled gently. "I don't need revenge," I said. "I have the truth." Pen scratched. Cameras clicked. The wind felt soft against my hair. Another reporter asked if I forgave Vivian. I answered, "Forgiveness isn't a gift for those who hurt you. It's a door you open for yourself." The crowd murmured. I felt lighter than I had in years. When the conference ended, I stood alone on the porch. The sky glowed a quiet gold. For the first time since losing my father, the world didn't feel cruel. It felt full of second chances. That night, after everyone left, I sat on the porch with a cup of warm tea. The crickets chirped softly. The house glowed behind me, no longer a battlefield. Just home. I closed my eyes and imagined my father rocking in his old chair beside me. I could almost hear him humming, the same tune he used to play while fixing things in the shed. "I kept my promise," I whispered. The wind brushed my cheek like a hand. I opened my eyes and looked at the stars. They didn't feel far away anymore. For months I had fought alone, cried alone, stood alone. Now, even in the quiet, I didn't feel lonely. I felt anchored. I placed my father's locket on my chest. The metal warmed. "Thank you," I said softly. The night didn't answer, but I knew he heard me. A letter arrived in the mail, thin and folded sharply. The return address made my stomach twist, the state prison. Vivian's handwriting was shaky but familiar. "You ruined my life," she wrote. "You turned everyone against me. I hope you never know what it feels like to lose everything." I read it once, then again. There was no apology, no regret, only blame. I picked up a pen and started to reply, but stopped. Why give her more of my time? Instead, I wrote, "You ruined your own life." Then I tore the page into tiny pieces and watched them fall like snow into the trash bin. The house stayed quiet, peaceful. Vivian's world was gone. Mine had finally begun. For the first time, her voice couldn't reach me. Her anger had nowhere left to land. I closed the door on her letter and on her. The mansion still held items Vivian hoarded, furs, jewelry, shells of designer shoes she never wore. I didn't want any of it. It felt like pieces of her greed, still clinging to the walls. So I held an auction. People filled the yard. Some came out of curiosity, others to support the foundation. Every dollar earned went straight into hospital programs my father once dreamed of funding. I watched strangers carry off her things one by one. A diamond necklace, bags with price tags still attached, coats she bought only to impress. Each item, leaving, felt like dust being swept from the house. By sunset, the rooms looked emptier but lighter. I smiled to myself. Vivian had tried to build her identity with objects. I was building something real, with kindness, with purpose, with truth. Her possessions bought vanity. Mine bought hope, and hope was worth far more. I decided to restore my father's study exactly as he left it. I dusted the bookshelves, rearranged the wooden figures he carved, and placed his reading glasses back on the desk. In the drawer, I found an old photo of us, me sitting on his shoulders, both of us laughing. I traced the outline with my thumb and felt warmth bloom in my chest. I placed the photo beside the lamp. Then, slowly, I removed the silver locket from my neck and set it next to the picture. It felt like letting him rest. The study glowed in the afternoon sun. It looked like him again. It felt like home again. When I stepped back, I whispered, "Your room is whole now." And for a moment, just a moment, I felt him there, content, proud, at peace. The house no longer carried echoes of pain. Only memory. Only love. Inside the locket was the tiny flash drive my father once hid. I held it for a long time, feeling its weight. It had saved everything. My name, my place, his truth. I opened the locket and slipped a tiny copy of the video file inside, tucking it under the metal frame. For the next truth seeker, I whispered. Because someone, someday, might face the same darkness I did. Someone might need proof, or courage, or a reminder that love leaves clues, even when people try to bury them. I closed the locket and hung it back around my neck. It felt lighter now, like it wasn't only holding pain but purpose. My father left me more than a home. He left me a guide, and now I carry that guide forward, quietly shining. At sunrise, the mansion stood calm, painted gold by the morning light. I opened the window and let the cool air in. The world smelled clean, new. I walked to the porch and looked out over the garden, the same place Vivian once told me I didn't belong. Now it felt like the center of my world. I whispered into the soft morning, they erased my name. But you can't erase love, and you can't bury the truth. The wind carried my words gently. I touched the locket, breathed deeply, and stepped forward into my new life. One built not on anger, but on justice, healing, and the legacy of a man who believed in me until his last breath. Thank you for following my story to its final, satisfying conclusion. If my journey inspired you, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments.